the leader of the Pharisees could eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. When he noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit down in the place of honor, in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by your host. And the host who invited both of you may come and say to you, give this person your place. And then disgrace. You will start to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. That you'll be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all those who humble themselves will be exalted. He said also to the one who invited him, you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors, in case they may invite you in return, you would be repaid. When you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. You will be blessed because they did not repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Christ. Please be seated. So a couple of things I want to point out from the first couple of readings. If you've ever wondered where John's Gospel's beautiful expression of Jesus saying, I am living waters, probably comes from that Jeremiah reading, where God says that they have forsaken me, the fountain of living water. The Hebrews reading is fascinating to me. Remember those who are in prison as though you were in prison with them. Those who are being tortured as though you were being tortured. Amazingly, phrase after phrase, moment after moment about visiting people in prison never says anything about what they were done, what they did, why they were there. Only that they are to be visited and cared for and treated as though you were in their place. The passage continues on about honoring the covenant of marriage that you find yourself in, keeping your lives free from the love of money, and finally, not being afraid. And that in all of this is to not neglect the opportunity to do good and to share what you have. With that said, let's move to this different gospel reading. My Oxford Study Bible labels this section as being on humility. And I can see where one would get that conclusion. If you take Jesus' words literally, he seems to be giving a formula to encounter humility. For those who humble themselves will be exalted. And perhaps this was the case, but it does occur to me that if you follow Jesus' words literally, you still have a problem. Because ultimately, you are focused on yourself, your own ego of achieving honor and status. I mean, that's sort of the foundation of this. Jesus sees them all jockeying over the place of honor at this table. And he says, oh, yeah, if you do that, you might end up being shamed in front of everybody. It's much better to sit at a lower place so that you can be brought up in front of everybody. And I almost can imagine if they took this literally, the same group of men fighting over the lowest part of the table so that they can get shown up in a good way in front of everybody else. Not to mention, we know people who self-serve in their decisions on how to help others. It's not really about helping others. It's really helping and positioning themselves. There's that danger always. So easily our actions become about us rather than about others. So it occurs to me, especially when you consider the context, that something else might be going on with Jesus' words. The occasion, we're told, is the dinner at the house of a leader, a religious leader. It says they are watching Jesus closely. It sounds like they're watching to see if he'll heal on the Sabbath. And guess what? He does. That's the part that's missing. In very similar text from a few weeks ago, a sick man appears and Jesus says, "Should I help him? Of course I should help him. Who would help someone if they could, even on the Sabbath day?" That leads to Jesus observing the fiasco of their fighting to be noticed by others. Now, a question for you. How many of you are comfortable with a sarcastic Jesus? Even saying it out loud, suggesting that Jesus is sarcastic. Yeah, it's like lightning bolt time. But consider for a moment. Oh, stop fighting over the spots. You might get shamed in this. Rather go to the bottom part of it, and maybe you'll be brought up in front, and everyone will see you, and oh, won't that be great? I mean, it's dripping with sarcasm. Tongue is firmly planted in cheek. But as I said, I wasn't comfortable with this idea of Jesus being sarcastic, so I did a little bit of research. Sarcasm, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, is the use of remarks that clearly mean the opposite of what they say, made in order to hurt someone's feelings or to criticize something in a humorous way. So right now we're in both possible outcomes. It could be a bad thing, or it could be a positive thing. Now we all know that sarcasm can be really funny, and can be really mean, and in some cases are both. Or neither. Vanessa and Edwards makes clear the perils of sarcasm, defining it as the use of irony to mock or convey contempt. Going further to say that sarcasm is merely thin-veiled meanness, a way of covering contempt or hate, which likely happens from either insecurity, latent anger, or social awkwardness. Henry Pexman takes a different approach, saying that sarcasm isn't necessarily these things, and is often used to be funny or lightly express things that haven't gone as expected. Here's an example. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, there's a scene where Harry is leaving the Weasley household, and Mrs. Weasley, who clearly cares about Harry, says, "Promise me you will look after yourself and stay out of trouble." To which Harry responds, "I always do, Mrs. Weasley. I like a quiet life, you know me." Now, you're already laughing for those who know Harry Potter, because nothing about Harry's life is quiet. Stuff is always happening to him, no matter what he does. So he's being sarcastic, but in the relationship of someone who cares about him. He is using sarcasm to express, my life is never quiet, no matter what I do. It's clearly a comedic device. But it's a comedic device that is fraught with danger. When you Google sarcasm, one of the first videos that comes out is entitled, "How to be sarcastic without being a jerk." Francesca and Chino wrote an article, The Surprising Benefits of Sarcasm, in Scientific American. So these were actual studies. The use of sarcasm, she writes, in fact, promotes creativity for those on both the giving and receiving end of sarcastic exchanges, provided that people get the sarcastic reference. Richard Chang's Smithsonian Magazine notes that research shows that sarcasm seems to exercise the brain more than sincere statements do. Scientists who have monitored the electrical activity of the brains of test subjects exposed found that brains have to work harder to understand sarcasm. That extra work may make our brains sharper, according to another study. College students in Israel listened to complaints to a cell phone company's customer service line. The students were better able to solve problems creatively when complaints were sarcastic as opposed to just angry. Sarcasm appears to stimulate complex thinking and to attenuate the otherwise negative effects of anger, according to the study's authors. The mental gymnastics needed to perceive sarcasm includes developing a theory of mind to see beyond the literal meaning of the words, and the understanding of the speaker may be thinking of something entirely different. Sarcastic statements are sort of a true lie. You're saying something you don't literally mean, and the communication works as intended only if your listener gets that you're insincere. Gina returns to this idea. She writes, sarcasm can be interpreted negatively and thus cause relationship costs. If your primary relationship is used and filled with sarcasm, that's not probably healthy. So, she says, how do we harness its creative benefits without creating the type of conflict that can damage a relationship? She says it comes down to trust. Our studies show that given the same content and tone, sarcasm expressed towards and received from someone we trust is less conflict-provoking than sarcasm expressed towards or received from someone we distrust. Now I think we can safely look at Luke's passage in a way that says, yes, there is a sarcasm line that runs through it. Remember, the context is that these leaders were first looking after Jesus to get him. That's not all they're doing at this dinner party. They are all trying to approve their status amongst one another. And in the doing so, I guarantee you, are not having a good time. Contrast the next chapter where Jesus is eating with tax collectors and sinners. And the same group of leaders get all upset with him because he's eating now with the wrong sort of people. Jesus is trying to get them to experience a different way of being. So in the passage that is sarcastic in tone, comes hopefully the opportunity of evaluation of motives. A look at how one can live one's life in a way that isn't always about them. Jesus' words about humility try and get someone in the position where they experience humility. He's not trying to get them ahead by subverting the system, simply flipping the hierarchy so now the other group is in charge. He's trying to give them something more life-giving. Because think about it for this moment. How do you teach humility? Can you wake up any morning and say, I'm going to be humble today? And you go out doing stuff and say, yeah, I was really good at being humble. You know, I should teach a class on being humble. I'm so good at being humble. It's hard because it's a complete change of mindset and the way of being that is no longer focused on self-achievement, but communal awareness. So for me, Jesus speaking sarcastically, or Luke using this in a sarcastic manner, points us to a different way of being with one another that is not based on status, that is not seeking to achieve, but actually enjoying people's company and expanding the community that gets the opportunity to eat together and play together and love together and care for one another. You don't do those things to achieve personal greatness, but instead, in the doing, I invite you to stand as you are able. And let us together say